Hi, everybody.
Hey, Brooke, can you hear
How
me?
you doing?
Brooke, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can
Okay,
you hear
awesome.
me?
Yes, ma'am. Just making sure.
I had some technical difficulties getting on today. I don't know what happened, but Kristen got me straightened out, thank goodness. Computers are great when they work. When they don't, it's a disaster.
In progress.
Well, it looks like it's 5 o'clock, and it looks like everyone is here that is planning to be here tonight as far as our members go. I would like to call to order the August 16th, 2022 meeting of the Town of James Island Board of Zoning Appeals, also known as the BZA. For those who will, please join me in an opening prayer. Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather here tonight. We pray that this meeting is successful and productive. Please guide us during our discussions and give us wisdom concerning the issues we may face. We pray for the ability to work together in harmony for the welfare of the citizens, land, and natural resources of the town of James Island. In your most blessed name we pray, amen. As we did last meeting, I'll skip the pledge tonight. I don't have a flag with me, and it's kind of awkward on Zoom. So hopefully we can get back to saying the pledge in the near future. This meeting has been noticed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. The board members who will hear your case tonight are myself, Brooke Lyon, chairperson, David Savage, vice chairperson, Roy Smith, and Amy Fabry. Our other member, Corey Hip, is absent tonight. She did give notice. Staff members present tonight are our planning director, Kristen Crane, Flannery Wood, our planner 2. I believe Flannery's in town hall. Believe we have Frances Simmons, our secretary to the BZA and town clerk. She's in town hall. Our town attorney and our BZA attorney, Bo Wilson. Our town administrator, Nikki Grimble. And I do not see any other staff or council members at this time. The board may now enter into an executive session for legal considerations if any board member feels like they need to. Does anyone feel the need to enter into executive? No? Okay. We will skip on over that then. Any person planning to address the board tonight must be sworn in. In order to expedite this procedure, those wishing to speak either in town hall or on Zoom, if you would please stand as a group. Mr. Wilson, would you please administer the oath at this time?
Thank you, Chairperson. Please raise your right hand, those who will testify. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, you are sworn. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson. At this time, we would like to encourage anyone who would like to make a public comment who is present at town hall and is signed in to do so. We would ask that you state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 2 minutes. Kristen or Flannery or Nikki, if someone would, who is planning to time the speakers tonight?
I can time people in town hall, Brooke.
Is that you, Flannery?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much. So at this time, we will start with town hall. Is there anyone there wishing to speak for 2 minutes? And if so, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, ma'am, we have one person.
Wendy Tripp, thank you so much. I think I've been in the last 2 meetings. I'm one of the owners of the Folly Roads property, which is right next door to where they want to build the Kentucky Fried Chicken. George Hines is our renter, and we have stated in every case that the Folly Beach, Folly Road, and Camp Road is an absolute mess, and we can imagine that place being the place that building is built. We're hoping that we were supposed to have somebody here who checked over the F situation there, or the bad back in the 2020 that they were using. We're hoping that now we've got some more information. I can't imagine it going from F to A or anything better. So I'm hoping tonight there'll be a decision that will help Folly Beach and Folly Road and Camp Road, that we don't have any bigger mess than we have now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tripp. Anyone else at town hall wishing to speak?
No, ma'am.
Do we have anyone on Zoom? Nikki or Kristen, or either one of y'all monitoring that?
There is one individual as an attendee. So Mr. White, if you would like to speak, will you please use the raise hand feature? Okay, I don't see that he is raising hands, so he must just be watching.
Okay. Thank you, Nikki. If no one else would like to speak on Zoom, then we will move on. I will mention we received additional email letters today with names and addresses. These are available as part of our record. We received 11 additional against and 1 additional for. That makes a total of 44 against and 3 in support of the applicant. The public hearing for tonight's case, BZAS 8-22-025, a special exception request for a fast food restaurant on a vacant lot in the Community Commercial Zoning District and the Folly Road Corridor Overlay Zoning District at 890 Folly Road, was held on June 21st. Tonight, we will continue the case proceedings. At the June meeting, a motion was made and seconded to defer the meeting until July, so the public could have time to review the traffic study. And then in July, a vote was made to defer again until August. in order for a peer review of the traffic study to be conducted. At this time, I make a motion to reopen case number BZAS-8-22-025. Is there a second to reopen the case?
Second.
Seconded by Vice Chair Savage. Francis, can you take a roll call vote, please, to reopen the case?
Commissioner Fabry,
Aye.
Vice Chair Savage,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Chairwoman Lyon.
Aye. It carries unanimously to reopen the case. It is my understanding the engineering firm Stantec and engineer Josh Mitchell, which was contracted with by Town Administrator Nikki Grimble for peer review, was on the approved contractor list for the town instead of the engineer out of Columbia suggested by Commissioner Fabry at the last meeting. Hopefully, you have all had an opportunity to review his report, as well as the response from the Kentucky Fried Chicken engineer, Dylan Turner, with Kimley Horn. At this time, I would like to ask if there are any questions for staff from BZA members. And then once we finish with staff questions, if there are any, we'll ask questions. I understand Josh Mitchell with Stantec is in Town Hall. He is the engineer who performed the peer review of the traffic study, and then we can question him. So at this time, we'll start with Kristen. Do any of the board members have questions for Kristen? No questions? Okay. So if we could, I assume, do you all have questions for the engineer? David's nodding his head. So Flannery, is Josh Mitchell in Town Hall?
Yes.
Great. The camera, okay, great. Yeah, if you come up to the mic, then we can see you. And thank you so much for being here and for your peer review of the traffic study for us. We have a lot of questions for you, I'm sure, and thank you so much. David, would you like to start? You were nodding your head first. Would you like to start, or would you like someone else want to jump in?
I don't mind starting, but
Okay.
I have found that Miss Fabry typically has a line of questioning that answers most of my questions, or asks them a little more succinctly. If she would like to go first, I will defer. If she needs a little bit of time, I'll do the best I can.
Okay. Amy, would you like to go?
No, I'll wait and let Mr. Savage or somebody else go first.
All right. Thank you. I'm sorry, sir, I forgot your last name. I'm sorry.
Mitchell, Josh Mitchell.
Mr. Mitchell, I'm Dave Savage, and I'm looking at the email asking if you could participate in this process for us. And in that email from Miss Grimble that was dated July 20th, I sort of laid out what my concerns were that I needed some assistance with. And the first one was, are the assumptions used in the conclusions stated in the applicant study in line with accepted traffic engineering standards? And I believe that you have answered those throughout your report. Is there anything new that you have here today that would be different from the memorandum that you prepared on July 28th?
No, sir, nothing new.
All right. The second question I have, anything for the board to be concerned about with regard to the study being conducted using February and March traffic counts? And I believe that you addressed that and you had some recommendations. And if I'm not mistaken, Kimley Horn had a response to your concerns. Are you satisfied that their response was accurate and in line with accepted traffic engineer standards?
Yes, and they, in that document that they provided, there's also documentation of coordination about that process. And yeah, that satisfied my comment.
In other words, do we have the best traffic study numbers that we can expect to have at this point?
Yes, it was done in an acceptable way.
All right. And this is the gist of my question. And it says, my focus is on what the additional traffic/safety impact, if any at all, with the applicant's proposal would be versus a conforming use, which may have high traffic. And in that question, I gave a little more elaboration. And for those people that may be watching, I think it's only fair that I recap that. And I indicated that the request above centers on the fact that at present there is no activity on the property. So there's obviously no impact whatsoever on traffic. The property owner has a right to develop the property, and the town allows and encourages development at this location. Even in the event of a future conforming use, one that we would have no control on, there will be some negative traffic impact, which would be legally permissible and outside the board's control. So my need for information from the study centers on traffic impact difference, if any, from a potential high-use conforming business compared to the present application for KFC. And if there is an increased traffic impact with the applicant's proposal compared to a high traffic conforming use, is the difference, and I use the term meaningful. I probably should have said something like statistically significant from a traffic engineering perspective. That is what I'm trying to determine from you. And that is my question. And if you would do the best you can trying to answer that for me.
Yes. So, and that's, the memo that was submitted in June by Kimley Horn, that was the goal of that memo was to update an analysis showing with a fast food with a drive-through what the traffic impacts would be compared to what was previously in the traffic report, which was if I'm not mistaken, a fast casual restaurant. So the difference between those land uses is that typically a fast food with a drive-through will generate more traffic. I mean, I don't think that's surprising for us, but based on the industry standards that we use to estimate trip generation potential, the number of trips that a certain site may generate, a drive-through, fast food with a drive-through will typically generate more trips. And that was documented in the Kimley Horn memo in June of this year. And their analysis showed that. Now, in terms of the impact, in the appendices of that document, there's a queuing analysis and level of service analysis and reports from the programs that are used to do this analysis, same programs that we at Stantec would use if we were to do this ourselves. So that's all done by the book. And that shows there is a slight, and so my main, talking about the access to the site, the access on Camp Road, which is full access, allows vehicles to turn in and out in all directions. That was the access that I focused in on most in my review, because I think that's where you're likely to have, that's where the impacts may be most noticeable, because the access, the other access is a right in, right out, which typically doesn't have too much impacts to your main line, your main roadway. And what the Kimley Horn memo showed is that there may be a slight increase in queue for the vehicles turning left in to that driveway off of Camp Road. Now, in terms of whether that's meaningful, I don't know that I'm able to say. It's not a matter of acceptability necessarily. I mean, it's the thing to think about is with a higher generating land use, it's likely that there's a higher probability of a vehicle being in that lane trying to turn left in that may not be able to make that movement. Now, and I think that's probably potentially a policy decision from a traffic standpoint. The impacts are not out of the ordinary, and it wasn't done or analyzed in such a way that I wouldn't have done it myself as a traffic engineer. I just wanted to note that if you do have a higher land use that generates higher number of trips, that left turn in particular could have a vehicle waiting there more often, which could impact the signalized intersection because there's 2 left turn lanes that come off the main line that could queue up there. Now, the average queue length was just north of 20. It's around 20 to 30 feet, which is essentially 1 vehicle. So, 50% of the time, there's likely to be 1 vehicle waiting there, waiting to turn in. But other than that, it's likely to be clear. So, I just want everyone to be aware of that. That was kind of the main concern that I saw. And, but again, nothing wrong with the analysis. That's just the output that came from it. I know I may not be answering your question completely. Please let me know if you want me to provide any more detail.
David, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. If I understand what you're saying, it is that with the applicant's proposed use, there will be a slightly greater hindrance of the vehicular traffic at that intersection, right?
Yes, and I think the report and the memo from Kimley Horn documents that well. I think with the slight increase in queue length and delay turning in there.
And this intersection, I think we all agree, is a failing intersection as it presently exists.
Well, I'm sorry, the intersection I'm referring to is the site access off of Camp Road. That was what I was referring to. But yes, the signalized intersection, as documented in the report, shows a failing level of service. Yes.
So basically from your report, in terms of confirming the generation of the numbers, the output that comes, we all tend to agree with. But do I understand with regard to you, it's just a policy determination that we need to make as to whether or not that hindrance is significant?
I do believe so, yes.
All right. I'm looking at page 2 of your report, and that is the report July 28th of 2022. At the bottom in orange, and I really appreciate you putting everything in orange for us to focus on. I need a little explanation. It says the site, excuse me, this is under a trip generation chart. It says the comparison indicates that if the site included a conforming use, the site would be projected to generate significantly less trips than as a fast food restaurant with a drive-through window. Fewer trips in and out of the site would also reduce the potential for conflicts at the project driveways and at the SC 171 Folly Road, Camp Road intersection. When you say conflicts, conflicts, does that mean delays, accidents, near misses? What do you mean by conflicts?
Yeah, just the number of vehicles turning in versus the opposing traffic that's trying to get past that site or that site access point.
So conflicts would include accidents?
It's not necessarily a one-to-one correlation, but typically the higher number of conflicts, the higher potential for a collision. Yes.
And when you say the site would be projected to generate significantly less trips than as a fast food restaurant, the word significant or significantly less, are there various grades or standards? For instance, is significantly the highest? What's below significantly? Help me understand what you mean by significantly.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily a gradation, but based on the table, just comparing the fast food restaurant with the drive-through window versus, say, a high turnover sit-down restaurant. As the table shows, it's about 83 less trips in the AM and 57 fewer trips in the PM. That being an 80 and 70% decrease is why I use the word significantly, but it's not necessarily a gradation.
All right. I need a little help on page 3 of your report under trip distribution / assignment.
Yes.
Basically, it says, as discussed subsequently in this memo, that has the potential to cause traffic and safety issues at Site A access. What is Site A access?
That is it's also referred to as driveway 1. That's the full access off of Camp Road.
Okay. And at the Folly Road Camp intersection. What traffic and safety issues are you concerned about there?
At the site access A, just kind of going back to what I was mentioning earlier, is just the additional trips, taking a left turn into that site, just because of where it is in relation to the signalized intersection. You know, if you imagine turning off of Folly Road, if you take a left, you've got 2 lanes to take a left in. If you're in the insidemost left turn lane and you turn, and then there's a vehicle in front of you that wants to turn into the site, it may present a challenge for you, because you've either got to choose to stay behind them and wait, and then if that queue reached back to the intersection, that could cause issues at the intersection. Or you may have someone who decides, I'm going to change lanes to get around this person who's waiting to take a left, and that could be a safety concern.
All right. I'm still on page 3, and under recommended improvements, it says, based on the LOS output provided, the proposed project is anticipated to increase delay at this intersection by almost 10 seconds / vehicle in the AM peak hour, and by almost 5.0 seconds / vehicle in the PM peak hour. Based upon these increases in delay at this intersection, which already experiences operational challenges today, it is recommended to consider improvement to mitigate this increased delay. Obviously, I'm a layman. Explain to me what you're trying to tell me with regard to the AM 10-second delay at peak hours.
Yeah, and so we kind of referenced this before, but this intersection, based on the report, experiences an undesirable level of service today, and is projected to continue to experience that. And so the point of this was just to call out what's documented in the June 2022 memo, that with the project traffic, that delay is projected to increase by 5 seconds per vehicle. So for every vehicle that goes through the intersection, they would expect to see their delay at the intersection increase by 5 seconds on average in the AM or in the PM peak hour, and then 10 seconds in the AM. Now this is a challenge because, you know, the intersection experiences this undesirable level of service with or without this project or this development. And so it's not as if the issues at the intersection are caused by this development. You know, there's plenty of other traffic, as we know, that goes through that intersection that's not related to this. But just to call out that there is an increase in delay, and, you know, 10 seconds per vehicle can be felt. But again, it's a question of, this is always a question when you have an intersection that already experiences this kind of delay, is whose responsibility is it to fix it? And so we're not necessarily in the memo saying whose responsibility it is, but want to call that out. And so, you know, it's a pretty well built out intersection in terms of turn lanes and everything else there. So it is a challenge, but we just noted that there is some increase to delay there. That's likely to occur.
I think I understand your answer, and you may not understand where you fit in this puzzle that is this hearing today. The applicant has made a request for a special exception, and under the rules that we must follow, it says special exceptions may be approved only if the Board of Zoning Appeals finds that the proposed use, and I'm looking at EF, vehicular traffic and pedestrian movement on adjacent roads shall not be hindered or endangered. And as I understand your testimony, as compared to a conforming use, the applicant here, there will be an additional hindrance of the traffic at this already failing intersection?
Additional compared to the use that was previously assumed in the first traffic report. Yes, it is a slight increase in delay. comparatively.
Okay. Now, when you prepared your memo, fortunately, it was promptly given to Kimley Horn, and they prepared a response to your memo. You've looked over that?
Yes, sir.
The testimony that you just gave to the questions I asked, is that still your testimony upon consideration of Kimley Horn's review of your memo? Do your opinion, has your testimony changed based upon what Kimley Horn wrote in response to your memo?
I don't believe my testimony has changed. However, some of the things that were called for in the original July 28th memo were answered, particularly the documentation that the site access was approved by SCDOT and the coordination on the volume development discussion that we had a few minutes earlier. That was, I think, very important and very helpful that was provided, and just documenting that whole process.
I think those are all of the questions that I have right now until I possibly hear other questions from the other BZA members. Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I noticed I'm Brookline, and I noticed on the Kimley Horn response, they responded a couple of times about a mistake on the striping in the site plan. And I can certainly ask their engineer when his time comes up, but I thought I would ask you as well how that would affect what you looked at, and what exactly does that mean? How would that change anything in your opinion, if at all?
I don't think ultimately it didn't impact the analysis. The analysis was still performed properly based on the site access that was assumed. That was just a point of clarification, another helpful point of clarification, because as we were reviewing the original traffic study, seeing this has to do with a right turn only arrow, so to speak, coming out and into the site. It appeared that way. And so our initial assumption was that, oh, this should be a right in, right out access instead of a full access. But based on that arrow, it's not, the right turn in arrow is not there today. And so that just confirms that it was a full access driveway. So it doesn't change any of our review.
And just from what you've said and written, and this really would make it hard to access the restaurant and drive through it all, but it looks like it would be safer coming on Camp to have a right in, right out only at that access as well, just like on Folly. And I think you touched on that in your report as well. That would be the least troublesome to the intersection and the traffic. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. At that point, it becomes a matter of, does the site have proper access? And I mean, it would be a challenge to access the site with two right in. But it would be, that would, like we talked about earlier, would reduce the number of conflicts at those driveways.
Well, thank you very much. And I appreciate the thoroughness of your report. That's all I have right now. How about Roy or Amy? Do y'all have any questions at this time for Mr. Mitchell?
I'll go unless you want to go, Roy. Okay. Mr. Mitchell, I'm Amy Fabry. I just wanted to follow up on part of the conversation you had with Mr. Savage and make sure that I understood you correctly. When you guys were discussing what seems to be the issue you bring up in your analysis, that when folks are turning from Folly onto Camp to try and make a left to access the site, that seems to be the problem issue, and that, and I'm going to hopefully quote you accurately, that the higher level, but a left turn in that those two lanes, that the car is going to block something so that they're going to stop the traffic there in essence. And you said that could happen 50% of the time. And did I understand that accurately?
That's my interpretation of the output from the report, which shows, and I apologize, this is in the actual report and we can look up the exact number. But from my recollection, it's approximately one vehicle of average queue. The length of one vehicle is the 50th percentile or average queue. And so that's why I said that 50% number is that on average, there may be one vehicle that's waiting to turn in. Now, it doesn't mean that they're waiting there forever, but it's likely to happen. That's why I said 50% of the time is how I interpret that. And just one vehicle that's waiting there. Now, there are going to be other, there's no vehicles waiting there, of course, but.
Right. So in layman's terms, just so that everybody can understand, it's going to happen frequently. It's not a rare occurrence. It's something that's going to happen pretty frequently.
Yes, I believe so. It's going to happen because it's serving a useful access to the site for anyone that needs to turn into the site that way, and that's their only way to get in. If say you're coming southbound on Folly Road and you want to access the site, you'll have to take a left signal and then take a left in. And so, and about 40, I believe it was about 40% of the traffic was assumed to come to and from that direction. And so 40% of the traffic would have to access the site then.
And same with people who are coming from like Riverland would probably take that same option as well. Through the Camp Road intersection, Riverland Drive.
Potentially, although they may be able to use one of the other right-in access points, but they could one of the other. That's true.
Okay, and then with Mr. Savage, you discussed that just touched on the level of service that Camp and Folly is already an F, and we in our prior meetings, which you weren't part of, that we talked a lot about level of service, that 80 is a failing level of service. And now with the drive-through, the proposed plan for the site, that now we're getting into like 160, and you discussed the numbers in your report as well. And so it's the difference between 80 and 160 is, pretty significant. So we talked about this with the prior engineer. I mean, there's no such thing as an F- when you're looking at a failing intersection. It's if it's failing, it's failing. And what we had discussed is that as the board, kind of the onus is on us as, an arbiter for the community to kind of make the decision on if it's an acceptable level of service, or if this causes any harm. Is it something that is folks can live with? And I think when you and Mr. Savage were talking, you said that with regards to the level of service, that's kind of up to local policymakers to make the decision about the 10 and 20 seconds, if that's something that people can live with or not, because of the condition of the intersection already, that it's already a failing failing, and as you expanded on, built out already. There's not much else you can do to it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe so, yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I just wanted to also thank you for your analysis when it came to looking at the different land use and kind of perhaps comparing it to, rather than, a different land use code than, kind of what we were already comparing it to. and basically saying in your report that that the fast food restaurant with a drive-through window, and this is your language, would generate a sit-down restaurant rather than a fast food restaurant would generate significantly less trips. And that, like, as Mr. Savage touched on, fewer trips in and out of the site would reduce the potential for conflicts. Is that your, that's your understanding of, that if it was a shopping center, I think was one of the land uses you compared it to, would, even though that is going to cause increased trip generation, it wouldn't seem to cause as many conflicts as a fast food restaurant with a window. Is that correct?
Well, in terms of the number of conflicts, I would say that is directly tied to the trip generation. And so if another land use was on the site that generated comparable trips to a fast food with a drive-through, then it would have the same potential for conflicts. I think this section of the report was to show really it's all about the trip generation potential of the site. And so if the land use is projected to generate fewer trips, then that would directly relate to fewer conflicts in and out of the site. And these were compared with other land use codes using the same assumption of the same square footage of the site. But if for some reason you were to build a commercial development that was 6 stories tall, I'm not saying we're doing that, but if you were to do that and it generated as many or more trips in a fast food with a drive-through, then it would have even more concerns from a level of service and conflict. So it's not necessarily about what goes there, it's about how many trips it generates.
Right. And in your example, you looked at the strip retail plaza and the high turnover restaurant, I think because of the different approvals that they'd have to get from the town.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. I think that's everything I have for now.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Amy. Does anyone else have any questions? Roy, do you have any questions for Mr. Mitchell?
I do not. I think Mr. Savage and Ms. Fabry have asked the questions that I would like to have answered.
Ms. Lyon, am I allowed to ask a question of the traffic engineer?
Not typically not with the protocol. I think when we get to your 10 minutes, and I would like to give you every benefit of the doubt. So yes, I think I will allow that if the other board members are okay with that. Are you guys okay if she asks Mr. Mitchell a question? Okay, yes, go ahead and do it now. But you're coming up next. So
no worries, I'm sorry, and thank you very much.
That's okay. I'm just going by my script. Mr. Mitchell, this is the representative of the applicant, and she would like to ask you a question if you don't mind. The board has agreed to break a little from protocol and allow that, just so in full transparency, and hopefully get everyone's questions answered. So go ahead, please.
Well, wait, if I might.
Yes, Mr. Wilson, am I not allowed to do that?
No, she is, but I don't know if you want Ms. Grant and then Mr. McCullough. Do you want to have one representative quote cross-examining the witness, or do you want, that would be normal, but if they would prefer Ms. Grant to ask those questions over Mr. McCullough, that would be fine. That would be fine too. I just don't know if the witness would be, subject to multiple cross-examinations from the applicant. So I don't know, Ms. Grant or Clay, do you have a preference?
I'm happy for Ms. Grant to, and we're not cross-examining him. We're just asking him a couple of questions about his report. So no flame throwing this afternoon. I think we'll be fine.
I use that phrase, but I just wanted to allow, at least give.
No, I'm not being smart. That Ms. Grant will be able to ask her questions.
Yeah. Thank you. I'll go ahead, Ms. Grant.
Thank you. I just want a couple clarification points from what you said, both in Kimley Horn's report and yours. Am I understanding correctly that the bottom line is that a fast food restaurant in the AM peak hours is going to add 10 seconds of additional traffic per vehicle, and in the PM hour, 5 seconds of additional traffic per vehicle?
Not, so are you asking if the fast food restaurant alone is adding those seconds versus a different land use? Is that the question?
I'll two ways. Yes, what is the difference? If there was just a fast, high turnover restaurant there in the AM peak hour and in the PM peak hour, how many additional seconds would it add?
That is actually in the Kimley Horn memo, which I have in my portfolio. Do you mind if I grab it? Is that okay if I leave the mic for a second?
Sure.
Okay. I'll look at these. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Sorry if you bear with me as I look this up.
No worries at all.
It would help if you point us to a page when you find it.
I will indeed.
I think she's referring to page 6.
Well, the reason I'm looking up in this original memo is because the 5 and 10 seconds that I reported wasn't necessarily comparing the fast food to another land use. I was comparing, I believe, the no build to the build. And so that doesn't necessarily address what it would be with a different land use. So I'm just looking up what's in the Kimley Horn memo. Six, thanks. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, yeah, my apologies. I'm not as familiar with this. So yeah, it's page 6, table 5, capacity analysis results. And so the columns are comparing the previous intersection level of service and then the updated intersection level of service. Those are the 2 columns we're looking at. And yes, so the delta in delay in the AM peak hour is 5.3 seconds. So that's the increase in the difference in the increase in delay with the fast food with the drive-through versus a fast casual or a sit down. I'm sorry, high turnover sit down. And then in the PM peak hour, it's 1 second of delay. That's at the Camp Road and Folly Road intersection. The signal there.
So 1 second delay in the PM peak hour between a high turnover restaurant and a KFC.
At the Camp Road and Folly Road intersection, correct.
Okay. And I'm sorry if I'm being repetitive, but where did the 5 seconds and 10 seconds that I heard before come from?
That was comparing the 2022 background row with the 2022 build row. So the background being if there is nothing there, that's an F of 150.4 seconds of delay, just above, and then the number below it is an F of 159.5 seconds. And then in the PM peak hour, you have 75.1 in the background and 79.3 in the build. So the 5 and 10 were meant to try to give a round number for sake of this.
So from no build to a high turnover restaurant, 10 seconds in the AM, 5 seconds in the PM. And you're going to add an additional second to that in the PM peak hours for a fast food drive-through, correct?
More or less, yes. Well, just because I'm an engineer and I can't not do technical things, it's a 3 second delay between the no build and the build in with a high turnover, and you're adding a, yeah.
Okay.
Roughly.
Thank you. Would it change your analysis to know if the fast food restaurant does not serve breakfast, meaning there will be no trips generated to the site in the morning hours?
Yeah, that's something that we actually discussed as we were reviewing this, and I'll say it the same way I've heard from our local district DOT and traffic engineer, and he says Taco Bell didn't used to serve breakfast, and now they do. And so even though the land use may not currently serve breakfast and generate any AM peak hour trips, if it's a fast food with a drive-through, if that's the technical land use, then we like to use what's in the trip generation manual because we don't know the future.
For the worst case scenario.
Correct.
But as it stands today, it's safe assumption there's no delay in traffic if KFC does not serve breakfast, correct?
Yeah, if there's no trips in and out in the morning, that would reduce the impacts in that peak hour. Certainly, there would be no impacts at that time.
Okay, thank you. That's it. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Grant. And thank you again, Mr. Mitchell. We really appreciate it. And if you would please hang around for a little while longer, just in case anything else comes up, we would appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call the applicant. Ms. Grant, you have a 10-minute limit to speak, present. If Dylan Turner is here, if Mr. McCullough would like to speak, this is your 10 minutes.
I appreciate it. I will be quick. I may turn it over to Clay for a minute or two, and then Dylan is going to wrap us up. But I think we've been talking about and hitting on everything that I wanted to discuss, which was to highlight what the special criteria lists and what we need to meet. And I don't think it's been any debate that we've met criteria A through E. I think what we're all here to discuss is F, which is that vehicular traffic and pedestrian movement on adjacent roads shall not be hindered or endangered. So from both engineers' testimony, going from no build to KFC, we're going to skip the high turnover restaurant, is going to add 6 seconds of restaurant, 6 seconds of delay per vehicle. So putting all the other technical aspects aside, that's what the report comes down to. 5 seconds from a no build to a fast casual restaurant, 6 seconds from a no build to a KFC. So does 6 seconds per vehicle constitute a hindrance or an endangerment? I don't think the standard here is not to any degree. I think that's an overly strict interpretation and standard to uphold. The issue is if the 6 seconds is so significant that traffic will be hindered or endangered, and we would argue no. 5 seconds is certainly considered an inconvenience, but to believe that it rises to the standard of a hindrance or endangerment is not laid out by the facts presented before this board. Just wanted to speak a little bit. I'm going to turn it over to Clay for a quick statement, and then I'll turn it over to Dylan.
Thank you again, Clay McCullough, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant. And I want to start by thanking all of you. I know this is the third meeting, and I know you all are taking this very seriously. Traffic, I mean, I live in Mount Pleasant. I get it. It's a nightmare all over the place. We all understand that nothing can get more calls from all of you than people stuck in traffic and raising Cain and wanting to do away with it. But as has been said several times, and as Ms. Grant just said, I think this application checks the boxes. You understand that this is a very high traffic area in this particular location, especially, and it creates passion amongst folks that are near it. But again, as just stated, it really does boil down to whether or not this is a hindrance or it creates an endangerment. It creates a dangerous condition. And we don't believe it does either. And the traffic engineer, and as you know, you really just have to rely on the traffic engineers. You can't rely on passion or what people are saying. And we believe that the traffic engineers largely agree. And I think he said it will be a slight increase, a slight hindrance. And as a practical matter, something's going to get built there. It's going to be a commercial, situation. It will increase traffic. And all of that will happen, regardless of this application. So we totally understand the issues that you're faced with. But that being said, these folks have really bent over backwards to try to do everything humanly possible to accomplish making this a safe location that will make the folks that you are trying to serve happy. And we believe that both traffic engineers taking that information as you must, that it does not create a technical hindrance or an endangerment under criteria F. And so we think it should be, respectfully, we think the application should be granted. Again, we'll answer any questions. And I do want to thank you for how seriously you've taken this and the attention that you've given this application.
I believe Dylan is at town hall. Perfect.
I'm up here. So once again, I'll reiterate what everybody said. Thank you all for this. Josh did a great job reviewing and great to work with on this. From the traffic perspective, I stand by what I said the first time is the delta in delay from what was previously proposed, or the change in delay from what was previously proposed to now, just doesn't seem like a significant increase on the impacts at Folly and Camp. And another thing that I'll say is an increase in delay doesn't necessarily mean it's an increase in or a safety impact. So delay and safety aren't necessarily hand in hand on things. And so from that perspective, there is that to consider as we go through this. But of course, I'll be here to answer any questions on this. And once again, thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank all three of y'all. So at this time, if you all would please stick around, any questions for the applicant, Mr. Turner, Mr. McCullough, or Ms. Grant? Does anybody want to start? Do you have any questions for the applicant? Any of our board members? Amy? No? David, you were nodding. Do you have a question? You're muted, I think.
Not anymore.
Okay.
I was hoping Amy could ask some questions so I could sort of gather my thoughts. Ms. Grant's examination was very good. Clay did a good job. I'm just trying to weave it all together. So I'd like about 30 seconds. I'll hear from Roy and I'll check my notes.
Roy, have you got any questions for the applicant?
Well, not really. I guess the only thing I'd like to confirm is how, again, how do you set yourself apart from the other restaurants that serve chicken on the island? I believe that we discussed you're different from, you said that you're different from Zaxby's and from Chick-fil-A because you have a family meal deal. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You have a bucket of chicken?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
Sorry, I would like to add to that to say, I guess, what also makes us different, not from Chick-fil-A, who's currently there, but from other quick service restaurants, is we want to be there. We scoped out the site and negotiated extensively a lease, and to my knowledge, other competitors weren't wanting to do that. So I think our desire to be here sets us apart from other restaurants. What sets us apart from our other chicken competitors would be our ability to serve families rather than individual meals.
David?
Roy, are you done?
Yes, that's my only question.
Very good. I guess this question is either for Ms. Grant or Mr. McCullough. I heard what you said in your presentation about significant delays or endangerment or hindrance, but help me out on this. In order for us to award us or grant a special exception, we can only do it only if the BZA finds that the proposed use involving vehicular traffic shall not be hindered. There's no requirement of significant hindrance. There's been no gradation of the difference there. I hear what you're saying there. Can you tell me what your position would be on that?
Yeah, I think it's our position that, nobody's trying to say that these roads aren't already problematic. This is a commercial property. We believe that we are not going to, there is going to be a slight increase in traffic, we hope, as a result of building this restaurant. We're not trying to run from that, but we don't believe that rises more traffic. We don't believe per this regulation classifies as a hindrance, and certainly not an endangerment. I don't have there's no legal description in here as a definition of what this means as to be hindered. I think the only thing that you can rely on are what the traffic engineers, how they testified in their reports. And, I think what I've heard repeatedly is this is a bad intersection, not that this application is going to create a bad intersection. And I think that's frankly where we are. You've got a commercial property with somebody who's doing everything possible to try to minimize the impact by all the steps that we've talked about in prior meetings. And so, I don't have like a case that I can give you that details exactly what you can go by, other than you've got to go by the words, hindrance and endangerment, and rely on the expert testimony.
I lost audio. Is that me or is that everyone else?
No, I can hear fine.
I
Everyone
can-
else hear okay? Can you hear now, David?
Probably user error on my part. Can you repeat that last 5 to 6 seconds of what you said, Clay? I think we all have to go on the words that are here.
Yeah, I think ultimately, the only thing you can do is be guided by competent testimony on technical matters, and you have two very competent folks in the room, one of which you pay for, one of which we've paid for, and I really don't think they disagree about much. I think they both say largely the same thing, and that we don't believe that our application and our restaurant hinders or endangers. We're not taking a position on the fact of whether or not, we all know, and you better than I, that this is this area has a ton of traffic, and you're all doing a lot to try to remediate to the extent you can. But we believe our application checks the spots. And what I was trying to say previously, and to the extent I didn't say it efficiently or effectively, really the background noise is not relevant to this decision, because you're in the rare situation, or you do have two experts who've provided reports, and that's what you need to rely on in this case. And I believe that the reports the experts largely agree. And there is going to be an increase in traffic, but we do not believe either the experts or this regulation, it would be classified as rising to a hindrance or an endangerment.
Thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions for the applicant, the applicant's engineer or attorney? Amy.
I wanted to ask the applicant's engineer about a response from Mr. Mitchell's, his input on their report, if I may.
Mr. Turner, could you come back up to the mic, please? Thank you so much. Ms. Fabry has. Go ahead, Amy, sorry.
On page 6 is what I'm looking at, and it's your response to Mr. Mitchell's report. So it's your report in essence. And on the analysis and level of service calculations, there's a section in there in about the middle of the fourth paragraph that says the comparison of projected turning movements in the June 2020 memo with updated land use to include a fast food restaurant with drive-through window indicates increased ingress left turns. That would be a left turn from camp to access the restaurant. As compared to previous projections, the turn lane analysis was not reperformed with the change in land use from the high turnover restaurant to the drive-through. Per the October study, I'm sorry, the June 2020 study, he goes on to say the increase in projected ingress left turns is likely to further highlight the issues of the left turn warrant at site access A for full access. And then he talks about how one of the recommendations is to limit that site A access to right turn out only. My question, in a long way, is that to me says there, and there was some discussion earlier with Mr. Mitchell, that the limiting of the Folly Road access point to right in, right out, and would leave only the Camp Road access, and that because of the traffic back up there, 5 seconds or 10 seconds, we can, disagree over that. But that was supposed to be a point of, trying to find his exact word, of conflict. And Mr. Savage asked Mr. Mitchell if that meant, did that mean accidents? What did that mean exactly? And I was wondering if I could get your input on there based on the information that you've read in their report. Do you see that same occurrence happening?
Yeah, it's that is, so conflict points, there's a really cool diagram in the traffic world of what conflict points are, but it's where a turning vehicle meets another turning vehicle or a through vehicle and all that. So by increasing the trip generation, I did a quick calculation of the 40%. It's about, let's call it 4 cars in and 4 cars out increase at that access from the previous analysis. So it'd be a total of 8 more vehicles experiencing conflict. So it's not an increase in conflict points. The conflict points stay the same. It's an increase in the number of vehicles that would travel through those conflict points.
Okay. And would you also agree that with those conflict points, whether it's 4 cars, 8 cars, 8 cars meeting each other, it only takes 2 cars to run into each other and cause an issue there? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct to create an accident. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't apply to me or apply to this, in my opinion. Though.
Right. And so I believe the reason why, and I don't want to put words in Mr. Mitchell's mouth, but in my understanding of his report, is the reason why he was recommending to restrict that access point, the site A access point, to also limit the ability to turn because of the issue of conflict, because the cars coming from to access it with that left turn in, the conflict is going to be that those cars are going to have to cross 3 lanes of traffic in order to access the site. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, so my understanding is that Stan Tech and Josh had recommended to relook at it and provided a left turn if warranted. It was previously warranted with the high turnover sit down restaurant. We discussed it with SCDOT. There's not available right of way to provide that left turn lane in there with the existing cross section that's through there. And so I think he's just saying, hey, look out for that. And he brought it up again with y'all as far as what that means is that you have about a car on average waiting to turn left from Camp Road in there. As far as how that correlates to safety, I guess as you're asking for accidents, I'm not sure there's a direct 100% correlation between that. That's more in driver behavior versus anything else, because we're not increasing the number of conflict points. Those are the same. It's just the number of vehicles that are going through those conflict points.
Correct, which was my next thought, is that, so if you're saying that the site was used for something that was expected to generate less trips versus more trips, you're creating more of a conflict, more opportunities for conflict. So I think you said 8 cars with the drive-through window. It would be 2 conflict points if it were.
Well, it's the number of cars. It's 8 more than the high turnover sit down. So I can pull up what that number of cars turning in there was for you.
Oh, you don't have to. I mean, basically my point is what that report, that analysis is saying is that by having the fast food restaurant with the drive-through window, that there's increase in vehicles and points of conflict than a high turnover sit down restaurant.
There's influence. Yes, there's an increase in vehicles going into the driveway. That is a correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Any other questions for the applicant?
We're good. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you very much. If there's no other questions for the applicant, at this time, we have a motion on the floor to approve the special exception for a fast food restaurant with a drive-through, which was made by me and seconded by David Savage at our June meeting that we've moved along to July and to August. So at this time, let's have some discussion. If anyone has any thoughts. I feel like we've, all been trying to do our due diligence and give the applicant every opportunity, benefit of the doubt, and listen to our community and our concerns with safety. But the bottom line is, do they meet the criteria? And we've gotten some really good information from our experts. The motion was to approve with no conditions. With what we've heard, we can always put conditions if you are so inclined to approve it with conditions. If you don't feel that it meets the criteria even with conditions, then that's we all have to look at that individually as we vote. A couple of conditions that I just wanted to throw out that affect all of this. You could put the condition of hours, which would negate breakfast, and that would knock out the morning traffic increase. I don't know how that works with a corporation. It's like the Taco Bell. They didn't do breakfast at first, but then they came in later and added it. And the conditions go with the site, right, Kristen, or with the exception. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
You can confirm that. I have another question, I think probably for you, Kristen, and I don't know if this is something that's doable because of DOT and the bank, or if KFC would even want, but this is something else we could look at. Bill and I have traveled all over the country, working in different cities and communities, and I know that in our career, when we'd be scrambling for a meal or trying to get somewhere and there's no way to access it, well, you have to go way around and turn around somewhere else and get back the other way. would it be possible to put the condition to only have that right in, right out on camp? You know, that would not affect the intersection from the camp, right, unless people broke the traffic law. I'm just throwing out some ideas for y'all to put in your discussion as we discuss the traffic studies and all the other evidence. But, you know, that may not be doable. Kristen, can I defer to you? Would that be something possible as far as changing a site plan? I'm not even sure the applicant would want that, but would that be a possibility, or would that be a problem for the bank and the DOT?
I mean, from a site plan standpoint, zoning, that would be acceptable. I would imagine DOT would need to approve it, and so would the property owner. The bank might cause an issue for U-turns down the road. I'm not really sure, but from a site plan approval, right in, right out, wishbone, something like that.
So those are things that we can talk about. We've just never had a case quite like this one come before us with 3 meetings, and I'm just trying to work hard to look at everybody's side. You know, we want to represent our community, meet the criteria, and welcome new business. So you know, if y'all were interested in looking at something like that, that can be a criteria based on the approval. And KFC may not even want something like that. But I will be quiet. I have probably talked more than I should at this point. You know, I have a lot of thoughts. I'm sorry it's taken 3 meetings to, you know, hash all of this out. But I do think that it's really important that we do our due diligence, and so here we are. And I'd like to thank everybody for all their patience and participation. So Amy, would you like to start or further start our discussion, please?
Sure. Just to piggyback on what you brought up, Brooke, is that the special exception runs with the property. So as well-meaning as the applicant may be, and you know that they aren't going to serve breakfast, or let's say that they're going to serve from 12 to 6 every day, and that's their intention, that if at any point the applicant decided to change that and or sold the property, anything could go in there and there's no limitation. So I would only say that if anybody was inclined, you know, or wanted to approve this, that they would, you know, seriously look at limitations, because the special exception granted to this doesn't run with the applicant, it runs with the property. And so if we say, welcome KFC, you know, conduct business, we understand you're not going to serve breakfast, that there's nothing in writing, you know, that would hold them or any future occupant of the property to that.
And that's something that we could put in a condition that would run with the property, with the special exception. We would amend the motion. We would approve it with hours of, say, 10 to 10, and not serve breakfast, something to that effect, if we're so inclined to approve it based on the other criteria, if that would affect it. But yes, you are correct. It does run. If we approve KFC, who doesn't serve breakfast right now, and then they sold it to McDonald's, who does, then it would be a different ball game. So that's why if we were to look at approving it, that would be a way to negate that from happening down the road.
Correct. I mean, I'll just, having read the reports and having taken a lot of time and speaking to both traffic engineers, and I personally am very grateful for all of their time, and you know, we can get together and talk about, you know, levels of service anytime. But you know, there was a lot of information in the Stantec report, and the thing that I keep coming back to is that by allowing the special exception for the type of restaurant with the drive-through window is increasing the conflict. And in my understanding of that speak and engineer speak is that that's increasing a risk to the public. Neither report nor any report that I've seen has ever measured, or it's not in here, measured the amount of accidents that occur, you know, if there was something there. They don't look at, you know, 300 cars went through and 5 of them ran into each other on a Tuesday. That's not what they look at. They, you know, plug things in and look at the trips and the times and everything else. So I'm not going to negate the delta on the increase in time. What I'm focused on is the fact that there is an increase in time between high turnover restaurant or a retail spot and what they're asking for the special exception. There is an increase, and that the intersection is already failing, significantly so, and that there's no room to correct the intersection at a future point, and there's no room to add a dedicated turn lane according to DOT at that intersection either, to try and resolve some of the conflict. So those options are off the table. From what I'm reading, it's not that KFC is not welcome as a business and it's not welcome on James Island. I just don't think this is the right spot for them. I think it's pretty clear from Stan Tech's report that there's going to be an increase in traffic and turning into this location, and that's going to present an opportunity for accidents to happen. And so that's all I'm going to say right now.
Thank you. Roy?
Well, you know, I like KFC. I like fried chicken a lot. But what I'm going to say is I don't think that having the bucket of chicken really makes them significantly different from other restaurants that we already have. Both Chick-fil-A and Zaxby's both have family deals. I think one's called a family pack, the other's called a family deal or something. So they actually do have these things already. We have 2 of them already on the island. It seems to me that because it's a special exception, it's on KFC to show how they are really better for the island and how they meet all of the criteria. And I don't think that they meet. I don't think that they really are. It's not. I'm not sure if it's A or B or both. I would say that it's definitely, I don't think they meet B because we already have 2 fast food restaurants, one on each side of Folly Road, very close nearby, who do serve family meals. Secondly, I don't believe that they meet F. It says vehicular traffic and pedestrian movement shall not be hindered or endangered. And it seems to me, every indication is that this is going to cause a hindrance. Now, I agree with Ms. Fabry, and the amount of the hindrance and stuff is debatable and stuff, but I don't think there's any debate. There is some hindrance. So it says shall not be hindered, and this hinders. So I think that they don't meet the criteria on either case. If the other board members disagree and feel that they do meet the criteria and are due the special exception, and that they've proven their case, then I would agree with Ms. Lyon that additional measures need to be taken such that the exception that this restaurant and others that may follow it as fast food drive-through restaurants don't serve breakfast, don't do other things that we've been talking about, which I guess breakfast is the big one. But I think that there certainly is an opportunity for someone else to come in and change if we change what we're doing and what we're thinking about if we do approve it. And that's where I'm, those are my thoughts right now.
Thank you. David?
I think Roy's analysis was spot on. I'm reading what it requires for us to grant a special exception. And it says exceptions may be approved only if the board finds that the proposed use, and it says with regard to traffic, shall not be hindered. You know, the burden squarely falls on the applicant for a special exception. And I agree with Mr. McCullough that we have competent evidence in the form of 2 traffic studies. And as I understand the testimony of both witnesses, like Roy said, there will be a hindrance. Now, I would be open to some discussion as to whether that hindrance is meaningful for us to maybe exercise some discretion. But I think under the clear statement of the criteria for which a special exception shall be granted, I don't think the applicant met their burden. And I think it's really important that we make clear, and I think I understand what Roy's saying too. Nobody is saying that there can never be any development at this location because there will be a hindrance of traffic. That is not what we're saying. The property owner has a right to develop this property. And if he develops a conforming use, there will be a negative impact on this roadway. We will not be able to stop it. But that's not what we're looking at. This board put a lot of effort into reading all of these studies, and our primary focus is what is the hindrance on the roadway considering a potential conforming use to the proposed use. And in that analysis, at least how I heard the testimony is there will be an increase in hindrance. You want to call it conflict points, you want to call it excuse me, not conflict points, the number of vehicles at a conflict point, you want to call it a delay, whatever you want to call it, there will be some hindrance there. So I would be inclined to say that the applicant did not meet its burden, but I'd be willing to also hear the thoughts of anybody else that thinks that I may be misinterpreting how we analyze this.
Thank you, David. Well, the 2 criteria that I have struggled with are B and F. B being should not adversely affect the general welfare. And if it's, potentially going to cause more conflict points and accidents, then it would not meet that criteria. And then of course, F, as we've all discussed, the vehicular traffic should not be hindered or endangered. So that, those are what I have issues with. And if it can be solved by, if the criteria can be met by conditions put on it, I'm certainly open to that, which is why I brought those up to begin with. But the right in, the right out off of camp, which would negate, my understanding, a lot of these traffic issues may not be approved or accepted anyway. And I doubt they'd have a problem with the breakfast condition, but those are my thoughts. I mean, what was it? After it was hashed out, finally, it was a 6-second difference for the fast food and a 5-second difference for the high traffic sit down. That's a second, but what is that? 20% of the difference. I don't know. I'm just, trying to wrap my brain around it. It will have an effect. How much and how busy it'll be, I mean, we don't know. So, but it's like you said, David, we're not here to look at the high traffic sit down restaurant. We're here to see if they meet the criteria and for this case, and look at it on its own individual merits. Any other thoughts from any of y'all? Amy?
Yeah, I would just like to expand a little bit on B. I think we had 44 letters in opposition and 2 or 3, 4
I think
to
3.
approve. One of which was the property owner. The community, 44 responses is a lot that I've seen in my short time here, but that's a lot of input from the community. And I think the comments were saying that the public felt that it would adversely affect the immediate community. A lot of the people that are on Rivers Point Row were talking about the same issue that they spoke of when we were looking at the brewery further up on camp. And it was how a business could negatively impact them. And they're already being squeezed by other businesses in the area. And they are the ones that, drive in and out of this every day and have to live with all of this stuff. And they were pretty emphatic in their request to deny this because of the further degradation of their community. So I think, we have to take that into consideration too.
Okay. David?
Yes, Amy, but also like what Clay said, we also have to filter out the white noise. And I don't want anybody to think that my decision is based upon those letters that people that took the time to send them, the contents that were outside of what we could properly consider. For instance, those letters that came in, I found that there were basically 6 areas where the objections were. You had some people that said, no more development anywhere. There were some, I believe Ms. Milliken said, against any level of increased traffic moving on Folly Road. I didn't consider that because I can't consider that because the law is pretty clear that, and according to the case, we know of no requirement that a traffic assessment must be performed comparing existing to proposed use. Were that the case, a special exception permit would never issue for a vacant premises because traffic would always increase and thereby be negatively impacted by the proposed use. So I don't want there to be any misunderstanding that comments like that swayed my opinion as to where I am right now, because I don't think you can. Because to say that there can be no development on this property would be an inverse condemnation, and you don't even want to get there. The next series of objections to this, I call it people saying, I don't want another chicken restaurant, put a Chipotle in there. Well, I read that, I heard it, but that's outside of the criteria that the board can use. So at least my opinion, as I did read those letters, that is not a criteria that I could follow or use to justify my belief that it may not have met all of the conditions of a special exception. The third area that I saw was a lot of people writing letters saying, we want you to put a family business in there, not a chain. Again, that's not a criteria. If you want to make it a criteria, these people that are writing these letters should be writing to council members, right? Changing what the criteria are or putting in a preference for a family-owned business. So while some of that content may have been in those public comments, it wasn't used by me. The next was no more restaurants I want a Target or a Marshall's. Well, obviously that's not a criteria that I have, and I may share that opinion with others, but please understand that that's not something that we can use to either approve or to not deny a project. Now, one that was very good, and I think people really thought that we could use, but we can't, is there were a lot of people that said that the rules for drive-through stacking of 10 vehicles and the parking requirements are antiquated. And I agree with those criticisms. However, those rules as they presently exist are the ones that we have to follow. So those people that seek to allow us to deny or approve on that basis, they have to contact council to get those rules changed. But then the great majority, like Amy said, it all came down to the safety and the traffic conditions. And please bear in mind that, or look back and look what we did here. Clay is right when he said that we must make a decision based upon the record. What he was saying is 1,000 letters from people saying, oh, this is going to be making the traffic worse. Well, we're appreciative of that, but that's not competent evidence to allow us to disapprove. In other words, we need, when you have specific testimony, we need expert opinions, right? You'll remember that at the first hearing, we recessed, right? We took a recess to allow all of these people that were concerned, that were asking us to disapprove this on a traffic basis. We took a pause to give them time to get a traffic engineer to rebut this. And then when we came back, nobody had done it. And we took a very unusual step of hiring our own traffic expert to take a look at this. And the basis for our ability to either approve or deny must be based upon the information produced by those witnesses. So I think if the public knows that, look, if you want to object to something on the basis of traffic, you got to have something a little more than your just opinion. And Clay was right on that. But that's why we made the move that we did. I'm still of the belief that I'm not sure that the applicant met the burden. I agree with you, Amy, that there was a lot of public sentiment here. I just don't want any reviewing authority to think that my opinion may have been based on extraneous matters that may have been included in those letters.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you for summing that up so succinctly. And I agree with you. I just, another note, a lot of the letters referred to no, not a lot, but there was a handful. They said no unhealthy chicken. That is out of our purview too. And I love Kentucky Fried Chicken. But anyway, but you're absolutely right. And I think the bottom line is, you know, we have to look at what the experts said in the traffic studies and the criteria, you know, is it met or not? And any other questions, comments? Any more discussion? Any amendments to the motion on the floor to approve the special exception? Well, if not, this time I will ask Ms. Francis if you would please do a roll call vote for us. The motion on the floor is to approve the special exception for a fast food restaurant with a drive-through.
Commissioner Fabry,
I'm sorry, just to be clear, if you could restate the motion, Ms. Lyon, that the motion is to approve without conditions.
Correct.
The fast food restaurant.
The motion on the floor is to approve the special exception for a fast food restaurant with a drive-through with no additional conditions put forth tonight.
Okay, I'm sorry, Ms. Simmons. No.
Vice Chair Savage,
No.
Commissioner Smith. He's muted.
Roy, you're muted. You're
I
muted.
don't find that it meets criteria B or criteria F, so I vote no.
Chairwoman Lyon,
I also find that it does not meet criteria B or criteria F, and I vote no. So the motion does not pass unanimously. And from the discussion and the statements made by Mr. Smith and myself, as well as Mr. Savage and Ms. Fabry during the discussion, The board did not feel that the applicant met criteria B or F. For the record, Chairwoman Lyon initially made the motion. It was seconded by Vice Chair Savage. All commissioners in attendance tonight voted no. For the applicant, the final decision will be mailed to you within 10 working days. You may contact the planning and zoning staff with any questions about the denial that you may have. Additional business, our next meeting date is September the 15th. There is one applicant in the wings. The deadline is not until Friday. So it's my understanding the paperwork is not in yet. So we will know after Friday if we have a meeting or not. And the next item is vote for chair and vice chair. Mr. Savage, would you like to take over the reins of chairmanship? You're muted. You're muted.
It's okay. The applicant and their attorney has now gone off. I was going to suggest that you offer them the opportunity to leave the meeting, but looks like
Okay.
they already did. I'm sorry, you said what, ma'am?
Our next item on the agenda is to vote for chair and vice chair. We always have our elections in August. And I wanted to ask you if you would like to take over the reins of chairperson.
Thank you, but Brooke, I don't think everybody kind of sees what goes into this preparing for these meetings. You're rounding up information and making sure everybody has everything. I'm not sure I have the time or actually the experience of knowing the people that you know. So I would respectfully decline. I think you do a really good job. If you'd like to keep it, fine. If somebody else wishes for it, but I'm not sure I'm the best person for this.
Okay.
Ms. Lyon, would you stay on as chair?
I will after tonight. I'm not sure, but I will. No, I'm kidding. I'm honored. I'm honored to serve one more year. If y'all would like me to do that, it's really BZA is really important to me as it is to all of y'all, and I just think we have an awesome board. Everybody really works hard and does their homework and cares and follows the rules. So. I would be honored to do it another year if you or Ms. Fabry are not interested in taking over. Amy shaking her head, Roy shaking his head. So I guess that would be David or Roy nominating me for chair.
I would say that David nominated and I seconded.
Okay.
How about?
Ms. Francis, let's keep protocol. Would you do a roll call vote, please, ma'am?
Commissioner Fabry,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Lyon.
Yes, I will stay on, and thank you all for the vote of confidence.
Thank you for your leadership.
Oh, well, thank you, Amy. Thank you for your service. And Mr. Savage, would you then consider staying on as vice chair then? You're muted.
I will. It's like the Cheers episode where they gave Woody a title. Does anybody else really want the title or need the title? I'll relinquish it, or I will.
I second.
Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Francis, would you do a roll call vote? We have a nomination for Mr. Savage for vice chair, seconded by Mr. Smith.
Commissioner Fabry,
Yes.
Vice Chair Savage,
You're muted.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Chairwoman Lyon.
Yes. Well, congratulations and thank you again for being willing to serve as vice chair. And Roy and Amy, thank you all so much for your service. And Roy was just reappointed for another 4 years, which is really exciting. I'm so glad that you're going to be continuing on to serve. And I believe it was it Amy or David who was also reappointed? Amy? Okay. So David, Corey, and I are on the same rotation. Amy and Roy are on this year's rotation. So that's also very exciting. Amy is going to be taking up another 4-year term as well. So that's great. I want to thank the staff for their hard work. Thank you, Nikki, for handling the peer review with the engineer. I felt like he did a very thorough job and appreciated him being here tonight. And Kristen, all you do, and Flannery to get ready for these meetings. And Ms. Francis, we're so glad you were able to make it tonight. And Francis had been out for some surgery and she's doing great now, and so glad that she was here tonight, and just appreciate your service to our board and the town and the community. We're very blessed to have such great staff and support. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I'm going to keep rattling on here. I also want to thank y'all for all your hard work with this case. I think we had one continue one time many years ago, but never twice, and never of this intensity. And I know it's disappointing for the applicant, but I think we all really did our due diligence, and they did not meet the criteria. So that's and we're very blessed to have such a great attorney to BZA. Bo, I want to give a big shout out to you too. Thank you so much for all you do and being there, to answer all of our legal questions and just to help keep us straight when we need it. So we're very blessed to have you too. So thank you so much.
Did we like the earlier time?
How do y'all like it? It suited me fine. How about you guys and gals? Everybody like it better?
I did.
I like it better. I feel my brain is a little fresher earlier in the day, and I know it's a lot more convenient for staff. I know that's not why we do it, but we care about staff, and your brain staff is probably fresher too. So that's good. Well, I'm glad that's working. Francis has changed all the media, all the things in the media that state our times for the rest of the year. And, we can just keep this time going forward if it continues to work for us. So as soon as we find out about our September meeting, we'll let everyone know. And if no one else has anything.
I do.
Okay. Yes, David.
I'd like, whenever we have a little training session, is, for instance, when we sort of get a package, I'd like to come up with a little sort of protocol that, as we're kind of reading the package, if we think we're going to have questions, a way to maybe send the questions to one source, so that when the applicant comes up, they have a little bit of heads up as to some of our questions. So they might be able to have some information, available for us. I'm not saying that we'll have questions every time, but there are certain issues. We've had some where, what is your per ticket time? And, if they're going to be technical questions like that, let's give the applicant a heads up so that the meeting runs smoothly and we get answered what we want answered. So when we have a training time, I'd like to talk about that.
Okay. That sounds good.
Brooke, I'm sorry, this is Kristen. There was a question in the chat box that asked if you could state the criteria that it didn't meet.
I did, and so did Brooke.
I know, I think they mean say criteria B is blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
That's
Isn't
just, I'm just
Are they-
repeating
Are
the
they
gap.
still on now? Does it need to be stated now? I mean, it's in the packet.
Yeah, I'm just saying what they said. I'm just relaying a question.
Oh, okay, thank you. I thought they wanted to know what the criteria was. And that's a good idea. I think we did touch on it a few times during the meeting. Like I know when we were
I
talking.
I stated that for the reason that I didn't believe it met criteria B was because we already have other restaurants that do the same thing, and it didn't meet criteria F because it does cause a delay.
Yes. And I think I read vehicular traffic shall not be hindered or endangered, as did Amy. I remember Amy saying that as well. I mean, certainly we can read that in the future. It's certainly something we can do. I just always assume people read the packet too. But we definitely want everybody to know why something is not meeting the criteria. So thank you for bringing that up, Kristen. Anything else? If not, this meeting stands adjourned.